Welcome back to the next section of our discussion with Tabish Khair, who is with us today. You've said that being a minority in this sense is a blessing as well as a curse. Yeah. Of course, the curse is very apparent when you have riots in India or your riots elsewhere. Of course, the minority gets hit immediately. So it's an immediate issue. But the blessing part of it is something which is perhaps interestingly put by you. How do you really see that being a minority, as you said, gives you a different perspective? How do you see, for instance, this playing out in your own life, particularly when you look at what you've talked about, Western rationalism being, quote unquote, the only model of rationalism and not recognizing other rationalities that exist?
Yeah, again, I mean, to start with the curse, because apart from the physical aspects of the curse, I think for me personally, the most problematic part of it is, of course, the tendency to be bracketed as belonging to that minority. Now, for me, I am from a Muslim family in Bihar, and these are all aspects of my personality, but to be read only as a Muslim, that becomes problematic. And that can happen. I mean, I've had experiences like that with sometimes extremely literate people in the West, people who would like me for being who I am, who would say that I am liberal or open-minded or whatever, as long as I said certain things, and then if I said certain other things, suddenly I would become suspect as perhaps an apologist for Islam. So that's part of the curse. Okay, and again, there's another part of that curse where, of course, you also have this pressure on you from the Islamist side to become a certain kind of Muslim. That's as big a problem, because I don't want them to tell me what kind of Muslim I'm going to be. And I'm definitely, I would resist that as much as I would resist being called names from any other side. The blessing is something that one needs to work on. Part of the blessing is, of course, the fact that one becomes aware of one's own position. One gets to know other cultures much better if one belongs to a minority. Because if you're surrounded by a majority culture, you automatically participate in it.
You don't see it.
You don't see it. It's part of, like, I grew up participating in Holi and Diwali. And the other blessing is, of course, it gives you a different perspective, not only on what exists around you, but also on you, because in some ways you also bounce your vision off from the majoritarian perspective. So those are some of the aspects that I would highlight. But one needs to work on it to some extent and not get bitter about marginalization or being misunderstood. That happens sometimes, part of the game. One can still overcome them to some extent.
There is an element of seeing Islam as fundamentalist, while the same logic does not seem to apply to Europe itself. For instance, you have Christian Democrats. Now, they're not seen as fundamentalist, but you have Islamic Party, like, for instance, Justice Party in Turkey, or you have something a little different, but in a similar vein, Hezbollah in Lebanon. These are seen to be immediately labeled as Islamist parties and therefore fundamentalist. Why do you think this happens?
I think it's such a complex matter at the moment. I find some kinds of Islamic fundamentalism very disturbing. But having said that, of course, one has to, for example, put it in a kind of historical context, the Cold War era, when in all these Muslim countries, socialists and communists and Marxists, let's forget about communists and Marxists, even socialists were imprisoned, sidelined, murdered by governments in power, dictators, sometimes pseudo-democratic governments, kings, whatever. Everywhere it happened, right from Afghanistan to Egypt. All these Muslim countries. For 30 or 40 years this happened in different ways. The West either looked the other way or actually patted some of these rulers on their backs. Now, in due course, that kind of leftist opposition more or less disappeared in these countries. And at the same time, these governments tried to fill it by encouraging minor Islamist parties, quite minor in those days, because they were seen as kind of offering people an easy opposition. Okay? And in due course, these Islamist parties became the only visible Islamist parties. People had lots of complaints. I mean, for example, the state was very often identified with a certain class. People were dejected about after decolonization. People had lots of legitimate grounds to complain. And these parties came to represent those people in due course, and their then we start seeing a kind of problem, which again is highlighted in a place like Saudi Arabia, where Islam is used both by the government and the opposition, because there's nothing left in between. Nothing has been left in between. And that's one of the reasons why Islamic fundamentalism seems to be so visible. It's something that we have manufactured, of course, which doesn't mean that certain kinds of Islamic beliefs do not have problematic aspects to them, just as certain kinds of Hinduism or Christianity or Judaism are problematic. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But its high visibility, its intensity right now, owes a lot to some of these historical factors. And I mean, I also have a serious problem with many of these Islamist discourses. For example, the veil. I have a serious problem with it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, but what's happening is a bit like if someone like me comes up and says certain things, and I seem to be normal, I'm automatically seen as a westernized Muslim from both the sides. Religious Muslims will see me like that too, and the West will see me like that too.
It's this bad term called moderate Muslim.
Or moderate Muslim. That's something I've even used that because I've been forced to use that. And I would say that about myself. I would say that culturally I'm an Indian Muslim.
And that's a part of your identity. That's what you are. That, irrespective of whether you believe in a religion or not.
And it also affects my writing. I mean, my novels, The Bus Has Stopped, Filming, The Thing About Thugs, which has just come out, they're all very different stylistically and thematically. But there is an element that comes from my Muslim background, because obviously I'm there in them as in oblique ways.
That brings me to really the last question. What is your next book on?
Well, at the moment I've just finished a novel, The Thing About Thugs, which is a kind of tongue-in-cheek thriller set largely in Victorian London in the 1830s, late 1830s, 1837 to 1840. And it narrates the story of an Indian who claims to be a thug and is taken to England by an English captain so that he can record his story. As the story proceeds, you start getting doubts about whether he is a thug or whether actually thugs existed as the British wanted to imagine them. But while he's telling the captain his story, the series of beheadings start to take place in London. And in due course, of course, he becomes the main suspect. So some of his friends, one of whom is an ex-ayah who has a lot of contacts in London, friends from the subaltern classes, ayahs, laskars, servants, ex-slaves, get together to try and save him. So in some ways, the ayah is the Sherlock Holmes of my novel, except that she's a very different kind of Sherlock Holmes.
Really love to have you with us again and discuss more issues, but I think this has been a very interesting interview.
Okay, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.